The scream tore through the silence at 2:47 a.m. Sarah Mitchell's feet hit the cold floor before consciousness fully returned. A mother's instinct. She knew that sound. Not a nightmare, real terror. She ran barefoot down the narrow hallway, her heart hammering against her ribs. Tyler's door stood open, light spilling out. She found him frozen beside his bed, shirtless, arms held slightly away from his body like he was afraid to move. Then she saw his back, blood mixed with something yellow, something that smelled wrong, sweet, and rotten at once. The mass between his shoulder blades had split open, and inside the wound, white shapes moved, writhing, alive. "Mom," Tyler whispered, his voice small and childlike. "They're coming out." Sarah's nurse training screamed one-word larvae, 6 of them, living inside her son for 3 months. It had started in New Mexico. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Bakersfield, California, had a way of crushing dreams slowly. Like the summer heat, pressed down on everything until nothing moved. Nothing grew. Sarah Mitchell knew this truth in her bones, had known it since her divorce 7 years ago, left her alone with a 2-year-old and a stack of bills that never seemed to shrink. At 37, she looked older. The mirror showed premature gray threading through her dark hair, lines etched deep around her eyes from too many double shifts and not enough sleep. She wore the same 3 pairs of scrubs to work, rotating them through the washing machine in her apartment building's basement. Her shoes discount Skechers from Walmart had holes in the soles she covered with duct tape. She was a certified nursing assistant at Sunset Valley Nursing Home, which sounded better than it was. The facility smelled of disinfectant and resignation. Sarah worked split shifts, 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, then 6 at night until 10, part-time hours calculated precisely to keep the facility from owing her benefits. No health insurance, no paid time off, just $32,000 a year before taxes and the hollow satisfaction of keeping elderly strangers comfortable in their final days. Her apartment was small, 2 bedrooms in a complex where the air conditioning barely worked, and the neighbors' arguments came through the walls like they were in the same room. Rent was $1,400 a month. After utilities, food, and Tyler's school supplies, she had maybe $87 in savings. That number haunted her. 87 quarters between stability and eviction. Sarah had wanted to be a registered nurse once, had even started the coursework at community college. But tuition, textbooks, and childcare had formed an impossible equation, so she stayed a CNA, telling herself someday she'd go back to school, someday when Tyler was older, someday when money wasn't so tight. Someday that never seemed to arrive. Her mother's voice lived in her head like a ghost. "Don't burden others with your problems, Sarah. Pull yourself up. Nobody owes you anything." Her mother had died of lung cancer 3 years ago, had waited until stage 4 to see a doctor because she couldn't afford the copays. Sarah had watched her waste away, had held her hand at the end, had promised herself she'd be smarter, stronger, more prepared. But here she was, drowning in the same poverty, making the same impossible choices. Tyler was 14 now, lanky and quiet. Too mature for his age in the way children of single parents often were. He had his grandfather's eyes and his father's height, but none of his father's cruelty. Thank God. He was a good kid, made bees without much effort, played baseball, built model airplanes with steady hands and infinite patience. He wore his grandfather's old Yankees hoodie like armor, the fabric worn soft from a washing. Sarah loved him with a fierceness that sometimes scared her. He was everything she'd done right in a life full of mistakes. She just didn't know yet that her love wouldn't be enough to save him. The camping trip had been Sarah's idea, 6 months of saving every spare dollar, skipping lunches, walking instead of driving when she could, $200 for 3 days in Gila National Forest, New Mexico, Father's Day weekend, though there was no father to celebrate, just a mother trying to give her son a memory that didn't involve their cramped apartment or the sound of bill collectors calling. They left Bakersfield on June 15th, the car packed with a borrowed tent, sleeping bags, and a cooler full of sandwiches. Tyler sat in the passenger seat with the window down, one arm hanging out, catching the wind with his palm. Sarah played classic rock on the radio, Tom Petty, Fleetwood Mac, the songs of her own childhood, and Tyler hummed along without knowing all the words. The drive took 6 hours. They sang. They talked about nothing important. They stopped at a gas station where Sarah bought them both ice cream with precious quarters. Tyler got chocolate. She got vanilla. They ate them, sitting on the curb while the desert sun beat down and made everything shimmer. At the campground, Tyler helped her set up the tent, holding poles steady while she hammered stakes into the hard ground. He brought her coffee from the camp store without being asked. When she squealed at a spider near her sleeping bag, he gently captured it in a cup and released it outside. "My protector," she said, kissing his forehead. He was already too old for such displays of affection, but he let her anyway. The ranger who checked them in was weathered and friendly, with a drawl that stretched his words. "Y'all watch out for the desert flies," he said, almost as an afterthought. "They're fierce this year. Keep your arms and legs covered at dusk." Sarah laughed. "We'll be fine. How bad can a few bugs be?" The ranger shrugged, just saying, "Cover up." But they didn't cover up. The evening was too beautiful, too warm. They fished in the creek with poles Tyler had made from branches and string. They caught nothing, but it didn't matter. They cooked hot dogs over the fire, burned them black on the outside and raw in the middle, and ate them anyway. Tyler counted 7 mosquito bites on his arms and showed them to his mother like trophies. "Welcome to nature," Sarah said, dabbing calamine lotion on each one. There was one on his back, between his shoulder blades, where he couldn't reach. "Want me to get that one?" she asked. Tyler shook his head, suddenly self-conscious in the way teenage boys were about their changing bodies. "Nah, I'm good." She let it go. That night, Tyler woke to use the bathroom. The campground facilities were 50 yards from their site, and he stumbled there in darkness, guided by the dim light of his phone. On his way back, he felt a sharp sting on his upper back, like a needle piercing skin. He swatted at it instinctively, felt something small beneath his palm, something that gave a tiny crunch before falling away into the darkness. Probably just another mosquito. He climbed back into his sleeping bag and fell asleep to the sound of his mother's steady breathing. In the morning, there was a small red bump where the sting had been, the size of a pencil eraser. maybe a little larger. It itched. Tyler scratched it through his shirt while they packed up camp. Sarah noticed him reaching back. Still bothering you? Yeah. Feels weird, like deeper than a normal bite. She examined it briefly in the morning light red, slightly raised, nothing alarming. Probably hit a nerve. Put some ice on it when we get home. They loaded the car. Tyler paused before getting in, looking back at the campsite, at the mountains beyond, at the endless blue sky. I like it here better than home, he said. Nothing to worry about. Sarah smiled and ruffled his hair. Well, you're taking a piece of New Mexico home with you. That's how memories work. She didn't know how true those words would be, how literal, how horrifying. They drove back to Bakersfield, to their small apartment, to the same grinding poverty and endless worry. Sarah did 3 loads of laundry. Tyler hung his grandfather's hoodie carefully in his closet, his fingers brushing over the fabric. He winced slightly when his shirt pulled against his back. That night, Sarah set her alarm for 6 a.m. and fell asleep with the television on, too exhausted to turn it off. Tyler lay in his room, on his side, because lying on his back created a pressure that made the bump hurt worse. Beneath his skin, in the warm darkness of human tissue, something had begun to grow. The first week back, Tyler told himself it was nothing, just a bug bite that hadn't healed properly. It happened. He'd had mosquito bites last longer than this before. Probably. The bump grew to the size of a dime, then a nickel. The itching became constant, a maddening sensation that followed him through his days. At school, he'd lean back against his chair and rub subtly, trying to scratch without anyone noticing. In baseball practice, Coach Bradley caught him reaching back under his jersey. "Mitchell, you got fleas," the coach called out, and the team erupted in laughter. Tyler's face burned. Oh, he stopped scratching in public after that. Only at home, in the privacy of his room, would he reach back and dig his fingernails into the inflamed skin until it bled. Sarah noticed the scratching one evening while he did homework at the kitchen table. She was between shifts, heating up ramen noodles, still wearing her scrubs from the morning. "Let me see that bite again," she said. Tyler pulled his shirt up. The bump had turned an angry red, the skin around it slightly swollen. Sarah frowned, touching it gently with her fingers. It was warm, too warm. "You've been picking at it. That's why it's infected." She went to the bathroom and returned with Neosporin and a Band-Aid. "Stop scratching. Keep this covered. It'll heal." But it didn't heal. Week 2 brought new symptoms. The bump expanded to quarter size, raised and hard beneath the surface. A faint red ring circled it like a target. Tyler stood in front of his bathroom mirror, craning his neck to see over his shoulder, and felt his stomach turn. It looked wrong, alien, like something that didn't belong on his body. He opened his laptop and typed, "Infected bug bite." The search results showed images that made him immediately close the browser. Abscesses, RSA infections, flesh-eating bacteria. He told himself he was overreacting. Looking up symptoms on the internet always made things seem worse than they were. Instead, he tried home remedies. He stole a bottle of tea tree oil from his mother's bathroom and applied it 3 times a day. He pressed hot washcloths against the bump until the water ran cold. He took 4 ibuprofen at once, hoping to reduce the swelling. Nothing worked. The Band-Aid Sarah gave him no longer covered the entire area. He started wearing his grandfather's Yankees hoodie constantly. even though Bakersfield hit 95 degrees. The heavy fabric concealed the bump's growing prominence, hid the way his shirts now stretched over it. "It's too hot for that thing," Sarah said one evening, watching him pull it on over his T-shirt. "I just like it," Tyler mumbled. She was too tired to argue. She'd worked a double shift, her feet aching in her worn shoes, her back screaming from lifting patience. She fell asleep on the couch at 8:30, and Tyler covered her with a blanket, then retreated to his room. He pulled out his phone and opened the search engine again. This time he typed, "Bug bite won't heal how long?" Then when to see doctor for bite. Then heart pounding, "Infected, bite dangerous." The results talked about sepsis, blood poisoning, tissue death. He read about a man who'd lost his leg to an infection from a spider bite. About a woman who died from what started as a simple cut. Tyler stared at his phone screen until the words blurred. He should tell his mother. He should say something. But every time he opened his mouth to speak, he thought about the stack of bills on the kitchen counter, the bright red final notice stamp on the electricity bill, the way his mother counted change from a mason jar when she needed gas money. He thought about a conversation he'd overheard 3 months ago, when she'd been on the phone with her sister Linda, her voice tight with shame. "I can't borrow more. I still owe you from last time," in his desk drawer, hidden beneath old homework assignments. Tyler kept a journal his grandfather had given him years ago. He pulled it out now and wrote, "Don't want to worry, Mom. It's probably nothing. If I just leave it alone, maybe it'll go away." But week 3 made ignoring it impossible. The bump reached golf ball size, raised and hard and visibly protruding through even thick shirts. The skin around it had turned a mottled purple red. Worse, there was pain now, sharp and throbbing, like something pushing outward from inside. Tyler couldn't lie on his back anymore. Sleep came only when exhaustion overwhelmed discomfort, and even then he'd wake to the sensation of pressure, of wrongness. At school, he sat forward in every chair, his spine curved, his shoulders hunched. He stopped playing baseball, telling Coach Bradley his arm hurt. He ate lunch alone in the library, where no one would bump against his back or ask questions. His friend Marcus noticed, "Dude, you okay?" "You've been weird." "Just tired," Tyler said. "You sure? You look—" "I'm fine." The sharpness in his voice ended the conversation. At home, Sarah finally cornered him in the hallway. "Tyler, let me see your back." There was no arguing with that tone. He lifted his shirt. Sarah's face changed. The color drained from her cheeks. Her mouth opened slightly, and for a moment she just stared. Then her nurse training kicked in, and she touched it carefully, professionally, assessing. "Tyler," she said, and her voice shook. "This doesn't look right. Is it bad?" She met his eyes, and he saw something in them that terrified him more than the bump itself. Fear. "We need to have a doctor look at this. Mom, I know what you're going to say, but we need to—" She pulled her phone out and called the local clinic. Tyler heard her side of the conversation. First available appointment, $95. Drainage procedure, $650 to $850. He watched her face as she did the math in her head, watched hope die in real time. Week 5 began with a conversation Tyler would never forget. His friend Marcus sat beside him at lunch, unwrapping a sandwich. "My uncle had a lump on his neck last year," Marcus said casually, not looking at Tyler. "Thought it was nothing. Turned out to be cancer." Tyler's heart stopped. What? Yeah, man, cancer. He's fine now. Got treatment and everything. But the doctor said if he'd waited longer. Marcus shrugged. Anyway, he's cool now. Tyler couldn't eat the rest of his lunch. The word echoed in his head all afternoon: cancer, 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 in study hall. He opened his laptop with trembling hands. His search history became a catalog of terror: lump that won't go away cancer, teenage cancer symptoms, sarcoma, lymphoma. Every article seemed to describe exactly what was happening to him. Persistent growth, doesn't respond to antibiotics, firm to the touch. Age range can affect teenagers. He looked at images of tumors that resembled the mass on his back, read survival statistics, learned about chemotherapy, radiation, bone marrow transplants, saw photos of bald teenagers with sunken eyes and brave smiles. By the time school ended, Tyler had convinced himself he was dying. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, imagining his mother's face when doctors told her the diagnosis, imagining her trying to afford treatment. He'd read that cancer care cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. They couldn't even afford an $800 drainage procedure. How would they pay for chemotherapy? He thought about his mother working double shifts, about the electricity bill with the red stamp, about the way she counted coins to buy groceries. He thought about his grandfather, who died when Tyler was 10, who'd always said, "Men don't complain, they handle their business." Tyler decided he would handle his business. He would be strong. He would protect his mother from this knowledge for as long as possible. But Sarah found his search history 3 days later. She'd been using the shared laptop to check her work schedule when she saw the browser tabs he'd forgotten to close. Teenage cancer survival rate. How to tell your mom you might have cancer. Average cost of cancer treatment. She sat at the kitchen table for 10 minutes, staring at the screen, her hands shaking. Then she walked to Tyler's room and pushed open the door without knocking. He was lying on his side, scrolling through his phone. He looked up, startled. "We need to talk," Sarah said. "About what?" "I saw what you've been looking up." Tyler's face went pale. He sat up slowly. "Mom, do you think you have cancer?" The directness of the question broke something in him. His face crumpled. "I don't know. Maybe. The symptoms match, and it won't go away, and—" Sarah crossed the room and pulled him into her arms. They both started crying, mother and son, holding each other in the small bedroom while outside the sun set and cast long shadows through the window. "We're going to the doctor," Sarah said when she could speak. "Tomorrow. I don't care what it costs." "But, Mom, the rent. Your life matters more than rent. We'll figure it out. We always do." Tyler pulled back to look at her. "What if it's expensive? What if—" "Then it's expensive. I'll sell the car if I have to. I'll—" Her voice broke. "Tyler, you're everything. Do you understand everything? Nothing else matters." She held him until he stopped shaking, then went to the living room and called her sister Linda. It was 9 p.m., but Linda answered on the second ring. "Sarah, what's wrong?" Sarah explained everything: the bump, the search history, the fear that had consumed them both. Linda listened without interrupting. "Tyler might have cancer," Sarah finished, her voice barely above a whisper. There was silence on the other end. Then, "Oh, God, Sarah, I'm so sorry. I need to borrow money, $1,000, maybe more. I know I still owe you from last year, but Stop, Linda said firmly. Just stop. I'll wire you the money tomorrow morning. First thing, Linda, he's my nephew. Family. You don't have to explain. Sarah's pride, that stubborn thing she'd inherited from their mother, finally cracked. Thank you, she whispered. I'll pay you back. I promise. We'll worry about that later. Just take care of Tyler. After they hung up, Sarah sat in the dark living room and Googled, how much does cancer treatment cost without insurance? The numbers that appeared made her physically ill $150,000 to $300,000. She closed the laptop and stared at the wall. That night, neither of them slept. Sarah lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, doing impossible math in her head. Tyler sat at his desk and wrote a letter he hoped his mother would never have to read. If something happens to me, Mom, I want you to know it's not your fault. You did everything you could. I love you. Don't be sad. I'll be with Grandpa. He folded it and hid it in the back of his desk drawer. The next morning, they drove to the clinic in silence. Sarah had taken off work, losing 4 hours of pay. The waiting room smelled of antiseptic and fear. They sat in plastic chairs bolted to the floor, Sarah holding Tyler's hand even though he was 14 and too old for such things. He didn't pull away. Other patients filled the room, elderly people, young children, a pregnant woman. The television mounted in the corner played CNN with the sound muted. Closed captions scrolling across the bottom. A news segment about rising healthcare costs. Sarah watched it with bitter recognition. Tyler Mitchell. A nurse called from the doorway. They stood together. Sarah squeezed his hand once more, then followed him down the hallway to examination room 3. Dr. Rebecca Hayes was 50-something, with kind eyes and the exhausted demeanor of someone who'd seen too much suffering and not enough healing. She shook both their hands, then gestured for Tyler to sit on the paper-covered exam table. "Tell me what's going on," she said, pulling up a rolling stool. Tyler explained the camping trip, the bug bite, the growth over weeks. Sarah added details he forgot: the scratching, the home remedies, the sudden fear of cancer. Hayes listened carefully, nodding. "Let's take a look." Tyler lifted his shirt. The mass was now the size of a small egg, purple-red and angry-looking. Dr. Hayes put on gloves and palpated it gently. Tyler winced. "Does this hurt?" "Yes, ma'am." "Any fever?" "Night sweats." "Weight loss?" "No fever. I don't think I've lost weight." Dr. Hayes took out her phone and photographed it from multiple angles. "Mrs. Mitchell, has Tyler noticed any discharge from the site?" "Sometimes there's yellow stuff on the Band-Aids," Tyler said. "And have you felt any movement?" "I know that sounds strange, but I need to ask." Tyler hesitated. He'd been afraid to mention this part, worried it made him sound crazy. "I thought I was imagining it, but yeah, sometimes it feels like something's moving under the skin." Sarah's face went white. "What does that mean?" Dr. Hayes removed her gloves and washed her hands at the small sink. When she turned back, her expression was carefully neutral. "I have good news and complicated news. The good news is I don't think this is cancer." The relief in the room was palpable. Sarah exhaled, and Tyler felt tears spring to his eyes. "The complicated news?" Hayes continued, "is that I'm not entirely sure what it is. Given the camping trip, the progression, and the sensation of movement, we need to rule out a parasitic infection. Have you heard of myiasis? They both shook their heads. Doctor! Hayes pulled up images on her computer medical photographs of larvae under human skin. Sarah turned away, her hand over her mouth. Tyler stared, transfixed by horror. These are botfly larvae. They're rare in the United States, but not impossible, especially in the Southwest. The female fly deposits eggs on a mosquito or other insect. When that insect bites a human, the eggs transfer to the warm skin and hatch. The larvae burrow in and develop under the skin, feeding on tissue. "Oh, God," Sarah whispered. "I need to stress this is just one possibility. It could also be a severe abscess or a different type of infection. But given your history and symptoms, we should investigate." "How do you investigate?" Sarah asked. "I would need to make a small incision, drain it, and send a sample to the lab. The procedure is fairly straightforward, done right here with local anesthetic." "How much does it cost?" The question hung in the air. Hayes' face showed sympathy mixed with resignation. She'd answered this question too many times. "The procedure itself is $850. Lab work adds another $200. Antibiotics would be around $80. Total, you're looking at approximately $1,130. Sarah felt the number like a physical blow. Linda had wired her $1,000 that morning. She had $87 in her checking account. That gave her $1,087 total. She'd be $43 short, and that wasn't counting the $95 office visit fee. "Does your insurance cover any of this, Doctor?" Hayes asked gently. "We have insurance, but the deductible is $6,000. We haven't met it this year." Hayes nodded, unsurprised. "We do offer payment plans for the remaining balance." Sarah did rapid calculations. Even with Linda's loan, she'd need to finance nearly $200. Plus, she'd have to skip work today. Plus, they needed groceries. Plus, the rent was due in 10 days. Tyler watched his mother's face and knew what she was thinking. "How urgent is this?" he asked quietly. Hayes chose her words carefully. "If it's an abscess, we should treat it soon to prevent the infection from spreading. If it's parasitic, those don't resolve on their own. They need to be removed." "But not today, urgent," Tyler pressed. "Like, could we wait a week or two?" "Doctor." Hayes looked between them, understanding the subtext. "I can prescribe stronger antibiotics for now. Sometimes that's enough to bring down the swelling. Come back in 2 weeks and we'll reassess." Sarah grabbed at this lifeline. "Yes, let's do that. The antibiotics." "Doctor!" Hayes wrote the prescription in silence, her pen moving across the pad with deliberate strokes. When she handed it to Sarah, their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Two women who understood the mathematics of poverty, the algebra of impossible choices. If it gets worse, any fever, increased pain, any changes at all, come to the emergency room immediately. Dr. Hayes pressed a business card into Sarah's palm. "Don't wait. Promise me." Sarah nodded, but they both knew the promise was hollow. The ER would cost 3 times what this visit would have in the parking lot. Sarah sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Mom." Tyler's voice was small. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I should be able to afford this. I should—" "Mom, stop. It's okay. The antibiotics will work." "We'll be fine." But his reassurance only made her feel worse. Her 14-year-old son was comforting her about his own medical care. What kind of mother was she? Tyler reached over and squeezed her shoulder. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner." "You have nothing to be sorry for. Aunt Linda just sent money. We can't ask for more." Sarah started the car. "Let's just get your prescription and go home." At the pharmacy, they waited 20 minutes for the antibiotics to be filled. The pharmacist rang them up. $83. Sarah paid with Linda's money, watching the balance in her mind drop to just over $900. Rent was $1,400. She'd get paid in 5 days, $680 after taxes. That would make it $1,580 total, enough for rent with $180 left for utilities, gas, food. They could make it. Barely. Tyler took the first pill in the car, swallowing it dry because they'd forgotten to bring water. Sarah drove home in silence, and they both pretended everything was going to be fine. For the first 3 days, it seemed like it would be. The redness around the mass faded slightly. The pain decreased enough that Tyler could lie on his back for short periods. Sarah documented everything, took photos each morning, measured the circumference, checked his temperature. "See," Tyler said on day 4. "It's working. We didn't need that expensive procedure after all." Sarah wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. But on day 6, the mass began to grow again. And on day 7, something new appeared, a small opening at the center, no bigger than a pinhole. Clear fluid leaked from it, staining Tyler's shirts. The smell that came with it was wrong, sweet and rotten at once, like fruit left too long in the sun. Sarah's nursing instincts screamed at her. That was the smell of necrotic tissue, dead flesh. But she pushed the knowledge away, told herself she was overreacting. Tyler increased his hygiene obsessively. He showered twice a day. He applied cologne his grandfather had left behind, the bottle gathering dust in the bathroom cabinet for years. He changed his shirts 3 times a day, stuffing the soiled ones deep in the hamper where his mother wouldn't see them. At school, he became invisible. He sat in the back of every classroom. He ate lunch in bathroom stalls. When teachers called on him, he answered in monosyllables. His grades began to slip, B's dropping to C's. Homework turned in late or not at all. Coach Bradley called him over after practice one afternoon. "Mitchell, what's going on with you?" "Nothing, Coach." "You haven't been to practice in 3 weeks. You're one of my best pitchers. We need you for the playoffs." "I can't. My arm hurts." "Your arm or your back?" Tyler froze. Coach Bradley's eyes were kind but knowing. "It's nothing," Tyler said. "Just sore?" "Tyler, if something's wrong, I gotta go. My mom's waiting." He walked away before the coach could say more, his face burning with shame. Home, Sarah worked her shifts and came back exhausted. She'd check on Tyler, ask about the mass, and he'd tell her it was the same. Neither of them wanted to admit it was getting worse. They'd made a choice, and acknowledging failure meant confronting what they couldn't afford to fix. But week 7 made denial impossible. The meat mess had grown to the size of a tennis ball. It protruded visibly through even Tyler's thickest hoodies. The skin around it had turned a mottled purple red, tight and shiny like an overinflated balloon. The pinhole opening had widened, leaking more fluid yellow now, mixed with traces of blood. And there was the movement. Tyler could feel it clearly now, especially at night. A rhythmic shifting beneath his skin, like something breathing, like something alive. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror one evening, shirt off, craning his neck to see. His hands shook as he held up his phone, using the camera to get a better view. What he saw made his stomach turn. The mass wasn't just swollen tissue. There was shape to it, structure. And as he watched, the skin rippled a clear, undeniable movement from within. He grabbed the edge of the sink and vomited into it. When his mother came home at 10:30 that night, he was sitting on the bathroom floor, knees drawn to his chest. "Tyler!" Sarah flipped on the light. "Baby, what's wrong? I need to show you something." He stood and lifted his shirt. Even in the harsh fluorescent light, Sarah could see how bad it had gotten. The purple discoloration, the weeping wound, the unnatural bulge. And then they both saw it, a clear wave of movement across the surface, like something pushing from underneath. Sarah's training, her experience, her professional distance, all of it evaporated. This was her son, her baby, and something was living inside him. "We're going to the hospital," she said, her voice steady despite the terror in her eyes. "Right now." "Mom?" "It's 11 at night." "I don't care. The ER bill will be Tyler Mitchell. I don't give a damn about the bill. Get in the car." But as she grabbed her keys, she hesitated. The ER wasn't like a regular doctor visit. They'd be there for hours. Tests, procedures, specialists. She'd seen the bills from ER visits at work, $5,000, $8,000, $10,000, and it was 11 p. They'd probably be told it wasn't a true emergency. Would have to wait for hours while real emergencies were treated first. By the time they saw a doctor, it might be 6 in the morning. She'd miss her entire morning shift. That was 4 hours of pay, $56 she couldn't afford to lose. "Actually," she said, her voice cracking with the compromise, "let's wait until morning. We'll go to the clinic first thing. Dr. Hayes knows us. It'll be faster and cheaper." Tyler looked at her with something like relief. "Okay. First thing, promise me if it gets worse tonight, you'll wake me up, no matter what time." "I promise." Neither of them slept. Sarah lay in her bed, listening for any sound from Tyler's room. Tyler lay on his side, feeling the thing in his back shift and pulse, and wondered how much worse could get. He found out at 2:47 a.m. The sensation started at his pressure, like someone pressing hard on the mass from inside. Tyler woke with a gasp, reaching back instinctively. His fingers came away wet, not the clear fluid from before, but something thicker, warmer. He turned on his bedside lamp with shaking hands. His shirt was soaked through, blood mixed with yellow pus mixed with something else, something he couldn't identify. The smell hit him like a physical force, sweet and putrid and fundamentally wrong. He stood carefully, afraid to move too quickly, and felt wetness running down his back. In the mirror, he could see the mat had split partially open, the skin no longer able to contain what was inside. And in the wound, clearly visible in the lamplight, something white moved. Tyler opened his mouth to call for his mother, but what came out was a scream, primal and terrified and completely involuntary. Sarah's feet hit the hallway floor before the scream had finished echoing through their small apartment. She didn't knock. She shoved his door open and saw her son standing frozen, his back to her. His shirt dark with blood. Tyler! He turned slightly, and she saw his face pale as death, eyes bulging with shock. "Mom," he whispered, "they're coming out." Sarah's nursing training took over, pushing terror aside. She crossed the room in 3 strides, her hands already reaching for him. "Don't move. Let me see." She positioned him under the lamp, and what she saw made her blood run cold. The mass had ruptured along one side, creating an opening the size of a quarter. Blood and purulent discharge oozed from it, but worse, far worse, were the white segmented shapes visible within the wound. They were moving, contracting, alive. Larvae, multiple larvae, living inside her son's body. For one moment, Sarah's mind went completely blank. Then years of medical training kicked in like muscle memory. She needed to assess. Vitals first. "Tyler, sit down on the bed." Slowly. Her hands were shaking as she pressed 2 fingers to his wrist. His pulse was rapid, 110 beats per minute. His skin was clammy. She touched his forehead. Warm, but not burning. Maybe 99 degrees. "How do you feel?" "Dizzy, nauseous." "Scared," he whispered. "Mom, what are they?" "We're going to the hospital right now. Can you walk?" "I think so." She grabbed a clean towel from his closet and pressed it gently against the wound. Tyler hissed in pain. "I know, baby, I know. We need to stop the bleeding." She took his phone from the nightstand and dialed 911 with fingers that wouldn't stay steady. The dispatcher answered on the second ring. 911, what's your emergency? My son has a parasitic infection. There are larvae they're coming out of his back. We need an ambulance. There was a pause. Ma'am, can you repeat that? Sarah forced herself to speak clearly, professionally. My 14-year-old son has myiasis. Multiple larvae are emerging from a wound on his upper back. He's showing signs of early shock. We need emergency transport. Is he breathing normally? Yes. Is he conscious and alert? Yes. Ambulance is dispatched. Stay on the line. They'll be there in approximately 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Sarah looked at the clock, 2:51 a.m. She kept the phone to her ear, but focused on Tyler. We're going to get through this, she said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. You're going to be okay. Tyler's eyes filled with the tears. I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. I knew something was wrong. Stop. This is not your fault. It is. I waited because I didn't want you to spend money. I thought if I just ignored it. Sarah knelt in front of him, taking his face in her hands. Tyler, listen to me. You are 14 years old. You should never have to make decisions about your health based on money. Do you understand? Never. That's on me. That's on the system, but not on you. But we can't afford. I don't care what it costs. You hear me? I don't care if they charge $1 million. You're alive, and we're fixing this. They sat together in the lamplight, Sarah holding the towel against his back, feeling the wetness seep through. She could feel movement beneath the fabric, subtle, sickening. Her son was being eaten from the inside out, and she'd let it happen. No, she pushed the guilt away. Time for that later. Right now, she needed to be strong. The ambulance arrived 14 minutes later. Sarah heard the sirens, saw red lights flash through Tyler's window. She helped him stand, guiding him carefully toward the front door. Two paramedics entered, a young man with a crew cut and a middle-aged woman with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a bun. The woman took one look at Tyler, and her professional mask slipped for just a moment. "Oh, my God. I'm a CNA," Sarah said quickly. "He has my issues, multiple botfly larvae. The wound ruptured approximately 15 minutes ago. Vitals pulse 110, temp around 99. No signs of sepsis yet, but we need to watch for it." The female paramedic nodded, recovering her composure. "Okay, let's get him on the gurney. What's your name?" "Son." "Tyler." "Tyler, I'm Patricia. This is my partner Mike. We're going to take good care of you." They loaded him onto the stretcher with practiced efficiency. Patricia started an IV line while Mike took vital signs. Sarah grabbed her purse, her phone, shoes moving on autopilot. As they wheeled Tyler out, their neighbor, Mr. Chen, opened his door, squinting in the hallway light. "Everything okay?" "Hospital," Sarah managed. "Can you watch the apartment?" "Of course. Prayers for Tyler." In the ambulance, Sarah sat beside her son while Patricia adjusted IV fluids and Mike radioed ahead to the hospital. Tyler stared at the ceiling, his face pale in the harsh interior lights. "How many are there?" he asked quietly. Patricia hesitated. "I can't say for certain. We'll let the doctors assess." "But you saw them." "Yes." "How many did you see?" Patricia met Sarah's eyes, silently asking permission. Sarah nodded. "At least 5 or 6 visible from the surface." Patricia said gently, "There may be more deeper in the tissue." Tyler closed his eyes. A single tear ran down his temple into his hair. The drive to Bakersfield Memorial Hospital took 12 minutes. Through the windows, Sarah watched the dark streets pass empty parking lots, closed storefronts, the occasional gas station glowing with fluorescent light, the ordinary world continuing on while her son's body was a nightmare. At the hospital, they wheeled Tyler directly into the ER. A triage nurse met them at the entrance, young, maybe 24 or 25, with dark hair and a name tag that read Jennifer. She took the report from Patricia, her eyes widening as she understood the situation. "Room 3. She told Mike, "I'll get Dr. Patterson." In the exam room, they transferred Tyler to the bed. Sarah stood beside him, holding his hand. The machines beeped heart rate monitor, blood pressure cuff inflating automatically. Everything was white and chrome and sterile, so different from their small apartment with its second-hand furniture and peeling paint. Jennifer returned to take more vital signs. Temperature is 100.2. Blood pressure is 105/70. Elevated pulse at 115. "Is that bad?" Tyler asked. "Your body's responding to stress and infection. We'll keep monitoring." She typed notes into a computer on wheels. "The doctor will be here shortly. Can I get you anything? Water?" "No, thank you." Jennifer smiled at him kindly. "You're very brave." After she left, Sarah sat in the plastic chair beside the bed. The room smelled of antiseptic and fear. She watched the monitors, watched Tyler's chest rise and fall, and made herself a promise whatever came next, whatever it cost. She would never again let money come between her child and his health. 20 minutes crawled by. Then footsteps in the hallway, and a man in a white coat entered. He was in his 60s, with silver hair and steady hands that spoke of decades of experience. "Good morning. I'm Dr. James Patterson." He shook both their hands. "I understand you've got some unwelcome guests. Young man, let's take a look and see what we're dealing with." "Doctor," Patterson moved with the calm efficiency of someone who had seen too much to be shocked easily. He washed his hands at the small sink, then pulled on examination gloves with practiced snaps. "Tyler, I'm going to need you to turn on your side. This might be uncomfortable, but I'll be as gentle as I can." Tyler shifted, and Sarah helped support him. Patterson peeled away the blood-soaked towel carefully, his face impassive as he examined the wound. He was silent for a long moment, leaning close with a penlight. Finally, he straightened and turned to Sarah. "Mrs. Mitchell, how long has the mass been present?" "About 10 weeks, maybe a little more." "And the rupture?" "Tonight, around 2:45. Patterson nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. He took his phone and photographed the wounded man from multiple angles, clinical and thorough. Then he called out to the hallway, "Jennifer, I'm going to need forceps, irrigation solution, specimen containers, and the surgical tray. Also, page Nurse Carter." Jennifer appeared in the doorway. "Right away, Doctor." Dr. Patterson turned back to them, his voice gentle but direct. "Tyler, you have what we call myiasis, a parasitic infestation of botfly larvae. I can see at least 6 larvae partially emerge from the wound. There may be more still embedded in the tissue. We need to remove them immediately and clean out the wound." "Will it hurt?" Tyler's voice was barely a whisper. "We'll use local anesthetic to numb the area. You'll feel pressure and pulling, but not sharp pain. I won't lie to you, though it won't be comfortable." Sarah gripped Tyler's hand tighter. "What's the procedure?" "We'll extract each larva individually using forceps. They have barbs that help them stay anchored in tissue, so removal requires careful traction. After extraction, we'll irrigate the wound and debride any necrotic tissue. Then antibiotics and close monitoring for infection." A young woman in scrubs entered, pushing a cart of supplies. Her name tag read Amy Carter. She was fresh-faced, couldn't have been out of nursing school more than a year or two. Her eyes widened when she saw Tyler's back, but she quickly composed herself. "Nurse Carter, I'll need you to assist with specimen collection and documentation." "Yes, Doctor." Before they could begin, Jennifer returned with a clipboard. "Patterson, I need consent signatures." Sarah stood to sign the forms, but another woman entered, middle-aged, with a tired smile and a hospital badge that identified her as Maria Gonzalez. "Patient advocate, Mrs. Mitchell, I need to discuss financial responsibility before the procedure." The words hit Sarah like cold water. Even here, even now, money. "How much?" Her voice came out flat. Maria consulted her tablet. "The ER visit is approximately $4,200. The extraction procedure will be around $12,000. If we need to admit him for observation, that's an additional $8,000 per day. Our work, imaging, if needed, medications, you're looking at a total between $20,000 and $25,000. Sarah heard the numbers but couldn't process them. They were too large, too impossible. "I have insurance through the marketplace. Your deductible, $6,000, Maria typed into her tablet. So, you'd be responsible for the deductible plus 20% of the remainder, approximately $9,000 to $10,000 out of pocket. $9,000. Sarah had $87 in her checking account. Linda's loan, what was left of it covered maybe $800 more. We have payment plans available. Just do whatever he needs. Sarah interrupted. We'll figure it out. Tyler pulled his hand from his mother's. Mom, we can't. Tyler. She looked at him fiercely. Your life is not negotiable. Do you understand me? Not negotiable. Dr. Patterson had been silent during this exchange, his jaw tight. Now he spoke quietly to Maria. This is medically necessary, correct? Yes, doctor. Then we proceed regardless. The financial discussion can happen later. He turned to Sarah. Mrs. Mitchell, I need your consent for the procedure, not your payment. Sarah signed the forms with a hand that shook. Maria left, and Patterson began preparing the sterile field. Amy arranged instruments on a metal tray, forceps of varying sizes, irrigation syringes, gauze pads, specimen containers. Tyler, I'm going to inject lidocaine around the wound site. You'll feel several needle sticks. Try to stay as still as possible. The first injection made Tyler gasp. Sarah moved to his head, stroking his hair, murmuring comfort that meant nothing and everything. 3 more injections, placed strategically around the mass. Tyler's face was wet with tears, but he didn't make a sound. Good job, son. Give it a minute to numb. They waited before. The room was silent, except for the beeping monitors and Tyler Shear's ragged breathing. Amy stood ready with the specimen containers. Sarah noticed the young nurse's hands trembling slightly. First time with myiasis? Sarah asked quietly. Amy nodded. First time with anything like this? You'll do fine, Sarah said, though she had no idea if that was true. Patterson tested the numbness with the tip of a forceps. Can you feel this pressure, no pain? Perfect. We'll begin. Mrs. Mitchell, you might want to step to the other side of the bed. I'm staying where I can see. Dr. Patterson gave her a long look, then nodded. Nurse Carter, first specimen container. He positioned the forceps at the wound opening, carefully grasping the first visible larva. It was white and segmented, approximately 2 centimeters long, and when the forceps closed around it, Sarah saw it contract. Steady traction, Dr. Patterson murmured, more to himself than anyone else. He pulled gently but firmly. There was resistance, those barbs Tyler had mentioned, designed by nature to prevent exactly this. The larva stretched slightly, and Tyler made a sound low in his throat. Almost there, Dr. Patterson said. With a final pull, the larva came free. Patterson held it up briefly. It was still moving, still alive, then dropped it into the specimen container Amy held. The sound of it hitting the plastic made Sarah's stomach turn. One down, Dr. Patterson said. The second extraction went faster. Dr. Patterson had found his rhythm, understood the resistance he was working against. The larva emerged intact and joined its companion in the container. Amy stared at the specimens, her face pale. The larvae moved sluggishly, their segmented bodies contracting. Are you all right, Nurse Carter? Dr. Patterson asked, without looking up. Yes, sir. But Sarah could see she wasn't. The young nurse's breathing was shallow. her eyes fixed on the moving creatures with something like horror. The third larva was deeper. Patterson had to probe with the forceps, feeling for purchase. Tyler's hand gripped the bed rail hard enough to make his knuckles white. Pressure, he gasped. I feel it. I know. Almost got it. The forceps found purchase. Patterson pulled, and this time the larva resisted more strongly. Seconds stretched. Then it came free, larger than the others, nearly 2.5 centimeters. This one's more mature, Mr. Patterson noted. It's been in there the longest. 4, 5. Each extraction was its own small battle. Amy collected them mechanically, her professionalism holding by a thread. The 6th extraction broke that thread. As Dr. Patterson pulled it free, the larva twisted in the forceps grip. It slipped, fell from the instrument, and landed on the metal tray. For a moment, everyone stares at it. Then it began moving across the tray toward the edge. Amy's scream was pure reflex, sudden, sharp, piercing. She stumbled backward, and the tray tilted. Instruments clattered to the floor. 2 of the specimen containers tipped, and larvae spilled onto the white tile. Sarah moved without thinking. She stepped forward, her worn nurse's shoes coming down on the larvae with deliberate force. The small, crunching sounds they made would stay with her forever. Amy pressed herself against the wall, hyperventilating. Oh, God, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Dr. Patterson's voice was firm, but not unkind. Nurse Carter, step outside. Take a breath. I can't. This is my job. Step outside, he repeated. That's an order. Amy fled. Through the open door, they could hear her gasping in the hallway. Sarah bent down and began collecting the instruments. I can assist, she said quietly. Dr. Patterson studied her for a moment, then nodded. You've got steady hands. 15 years as a CNA. Then let's finish this. Together, they continued. Sarah held the containers while Dr. Patterson extracted the 7th larva. It broke apart during removal, and he had to irrigate the wound to flush out the pieces. The saline solution ran pink with blood and yellow with infection. I want to do an ultrasound, Dr. Patterson said. Make sure we got them all. Jennifer brought the portable ultrasound machine, wheeling it into the room with practiced efficiency. Dr. Patterson squeezed gel onto Tyler's back, and the cold made him flinch. Just checking to make sure we got them all, the doctor explained. Running the probe carefully over the wound area, they all watched the grainy black and white image on the screen. Sarah had seen enough ultrasounds during her training to understand what she was looking at: tissue layers, the cavity where the larvae had been, fluid pockets. Then something moved. There, Dr. Patterson said quietly, pointing to a shadow. One more, deeper than the others. Tyler's voice was raw. Please, just get it out. Dr. Patterson set down the probe and picked up the forceps again. This one's going to require a slightly larger incision. Tyler, you'll feel more pressure. He made a precise cut, extending the wound opening. Fresh blood welled up, and Sarah dabbed it away with gauze. Dr. Patterson probed deep into the tissue. His face concentrated. 30 seconds passed. 45. Got it! The forceps closed around something. He pulled, slowly and steadily. Tyler's back arched despite the anesthetic, a sound escaping him that was barely human. The eighth larva emerged. It was the largest, yet nearly 3 centimeters pale and segmented, and still very much alive. Patterson dropped it into a fresh container, and it immediately began moving toward the edge. This one was almost ready to emerge on its own, he said. His voice was clinical, but Sarah heard the disgust underneath. Another day or two and it would have crawled out. Tyler turned his head and vomited over the side of the bed. Sarah grabbed a basin, but most of it hit the floor. Jennifer appeared with cleaning supplies, moving efficiently around them without judgment. Dr. Patterson ran the ultrasound probe over the area again. This time, the image showed only the wound cavity irregular, about the size of a plum, but empty of parasites. That's all of them? Now we clean it. The debridement took another 20 minutes. Patterson irrigated the wound with saline, flushing out debris and necrotic tissue. Some of the tissue was gray and dead, and he removed it carefully with scissors and forceps. Tyler was beyond pain now, beyond fear, just enduring, existing, waiting for it to be over. Sarah watched the cavity in her son's back grow as Patterson worked, creating a wound that would heal from the inside out. It would take weeks, months maybe, and it would leave a scar that Tyler would carry forever. Finally, Dr. Patterson packed the wound with gauzes soaked in antibiotic solution. He secured it with medical tape, his movements gentle now that the worst was over. Tyler, you did incredibly well, better than most adults would have. He stripped off his gloves and washed his hands. We're going to admit you for observation. I want to make sure the infection doesn't spread, and you'll need IV antibiotics for at least 48 hours. Can I go home after that? Tyler's voice was barely audible. We'll see how you respond to treatment. If your fever stays down and there's no sign of sepsis, possibly. But you'll need daily wound care, packing changes, monitoring for infection. We can arrange home health nursing. Sarah felt the costs mounting with every word. ER visit, procedure, hospital admission, 3 days minimum, home health care. The number Maria had quoted, 20 to 25,000, was starting to feel conservative. Dr. Patterson must have seen something in her face. He pulled up a chair and sat, speaking directly to her. Miss Mitchell, I want you to know something. I've been an emergency physician for 40 years. I see this pattern, monthly patients who delay care because of cost. And by the time they come in, what could have been an $800 procedure has become a $20,000 crisis. Sarah's throat tightened. I know. I made the wrong choice. The system made you choose between rent and your son's health. That's not a choice any parent should have to make. He leaned forward. Last month, I had a diabetic woman who couldn't afford insulin. She rationed it, lost her foot to gangrene. Month before that, a man with chest pain waited 3 days because he didn't want to come to the ER. Massive heart attack. He didn't make it. He paused. Your son is alive. That's what matters. The rest we figure out. The rest is impossible, Sarah whispered. I make $32,000 a year. I can't pay $10,000. The hospital has charity care programs, payment plans. You won't be alone in this. But Sarah knew better. She'd seen the bills at work, watched families bankrupted by medical debt. Still, Tyler was alive. That was worth bankruptcy. Worth anything. Jennifer returned with admission papers. We're moving Tyler to room 412, medical floor, east wing. The transfer took 30 minutes. Tyler was moved to a proper hospital bed, connected to monitors, given warm blankets. An IV pole stood beside him, fluids dripping steadily into his arm. He looked small in the large bed, young and vulnerable. Sarah pulled a chair beside him and sat, taking his hand. "Mom, I'm sorry," he said for the 100th time. "If you apologize one more time, I'm going to scream," Sarah said, but her voice was gentle. "Tyler, I need you to listen to me. Really listen." He met her eyes. "I was wrong," Sarah continued, "about so many things. I taught you to be tough, to not complain, to handle things yourself. Those aren't always bad lessons. But I also taught you, without meaning to, that asking for help was weakness, that needing things was shameful, and that almost killed you." Tyler's eyes filled with tears. "You were just trying to keep us afloat. I was drowning us both because we were so busy being proud, being strong, being independent, that we nearly lost everything that actually mattered." She squeezed his hand. "From now on, we talk about everything, even when it's hard, even when it costs money, especially when it costs money, because your life is worth more than my pride. What if we lose the apartment? Then we lose it. We'll figure it out. But I'm not losing you." She wiped her eyes. "Deal, deal." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the monitors beep and the sounds of the hospital beyond their door. Dawn was beginning to break outside the window, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Sarah's phone buzzed. Linda, calling for the 3rd time. Sarah had been ignoring the calls, not ready to explain. Now she answered. "Sarah, finally, are you okay? I saw you called 911. I have you on my emergency contact app. What's happening?" Sarah explained everything. The rupture, the ER, the larvae, the procedure. Linda listened without interrupting, and when Sarah finished, there was silence. Then Linda said, "I'm coming down. I'll be there by noon." "Linda, you don't have to. He's my nephew. You're my sister. I'm coming." "We're okay now. The worst is over. The worst is never over. Until family shows up, I'm coming." After they hung up, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in months. Not quite hope, that was too strong a word, but maybe the beginning of it. The sense that she wasn't completely alone. A new doctor arrived at 8 a.m., a woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes and efficient movements. "I am Dr. Susan Clark, the hospitalist who'll be managing Tyler's care during admission. Let me take a look at those labs." She pulled up results on a tablet. White blood cell count is elevated 18,000. That indicates active infection, which we expected. Temperature is 100.6. Blood cultures are pending. We'll know in 24 hours if there's bacteria in the bloodstream. "Is that sepsis?" Sarah asked. "Not yet. We caught it before it could progress to sepsis, but we'll monitor closely." Dr. Clark examined Tyler's wound, checking Dr. Deaton Patterson's work. "This will need packing changes twice daily. The home health nurse will do one, and someone at home will need to do the other. It's not difficult, but it's important. Can you handle that? Mrs. Mitchell, I'm a CNA. I can do it. Good. If all goes well, he can discharge in 3 days, but he'll need to be out of school for at least 2 weeks while this heals. More time off work for Sarah, more lost income, but she just nodded. Whatever he needs. By mid-morning, Tyler was sleeping exhausted from trauma, pain medication, and the simple relief of having the ordeal over. Sarah sat in the chair beside his bed, watching him breathe, and allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had almost happened. Her son had been eaten alive, slowly, over weeks. While she knew something was wrong, but chose to wait. The guilt was overwhelming. She'd made that choice based on money, based on pride, based on all the wrong reasons. But underneath the guilt was something else. Anger. Not at herself, well, yes, at herself. But not only at herself. At a system that made a working mother choose between rent, bed, and health care. At insurance companies that charged $380 a month for coverage that covered nothing until you'd spent $6,000. At a country rich enough to send rockets to Mars but unable to ensure its children could see a doctor when they were sick. Maria Gonzalez returned at 11 with an itemized estimate. Sarah looked at the numbers: ER visit, procedure, labs, imaging, 3-day admission, medications, surprise. The total came to $22,847. With her insurance, Sarah's responsibility would be approximately $9,138. $9,000. She made $32,000 a year before taxes. After taxes, maybe $24,000. $9,000 was more than a third of her annual take-home pay. We have payment plans starting at $150 per month, Maria said gently. Sarah did the math. $150 a month would take 61 months, more than 5 years. And that was assuming no interest, which there would be. What about charity care? Sarah asked. Remembering Patterson's words, Maria handed her an application. If your income is below 200% of the federal poverty line, you may qualify for a reduction. For a household of 2, that's about $32,000. That's exactly what I make. Then you should apply. It could reduce your bill by 50 to 75%. For the first time since 2:47 that morning, Sarah felt something loosen in her chest. Not hope exactly, but possibility. This story reminds us that the strongest moments in life aren't when we stand alone, but when we finally allow ourselves to be held. Sarah Mitchell spent months carrying an impossible weight, the kind so many of us know too well. That crushing choice between paying rent and saving the ones we love, the shame of needing help, the pride that nearly destroyed her family. But here's what changed everything the moment she stopped pretending she could do it all alone. When Linda said, "I'm coming, Dart," when Dart Patterson said, "We'll figure it out," when strangers donated to help, that's when healing truly began. Not just for Tyler's wounds, but for the belief that struggling in silence is somehow noble. We've all been taught to be strong, to not burden others, to handle our problems ourselves. But real strength is admitting when the load is too heavy. It's asking for help. It's accepting it when offered. It's choosing connection over isolation. Tyler survived. survived because Sarah finally chose her son over her pride, and in doing so, she found something more valuable than independence. She found community. Have you ever waited too long to ask for help? What would you tell someone facing an impossible choice right now? Share your thoughts below. Das ist sie,